Kiran Dhanuka, Chief Customer Officer, MasterControl. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. I loved your presentation this morning, and I want to ask you about the customer always being in the room. And when I heard you talk about that constant awareness of the customer, I couldn't help but think of the many times I've read about Jeff Bezos at Amazon in the early days would always have an empty chair brought into the conference room, sat at the table, the chair by the table, empty as though it was the table, that was the chair where the customer was represented. Is that part of the kind of culture that you're trying to create at MasterControl?
Absolutely. So whether the customer exists in the room or not, there is a voice for the customer in the room. When there is a board meeting happening, there is representation for the customer. Oftentimes what happens is within organizations, we make siloed decisions and we forget to ask ourselves the question, if I were to put myself in the customer's shoes, would they want me to do this? I want to instill a culture within my teams, my broader teams, in terms of whenever you're doing something, think about the customer and come outside in. Don't think about, it's going to be easier if we did this, but will it be easier for the customer? Start there and then back into it.
How would you characterize the receptiveness of people within the company right now?
They're very open and everybody has great intentions in terms of growing MasterControl. We all want it to be wildly successful.
Do you worry that sometimes they're focused on growing MasterControl, but not the customer? In other words, it's like playing tennis and watching the scoreboard instead of watching the ball?
There is always a balance that we need to strike between a profitable business and making sure your customers are happy. In the end, it doesn't have to be a competition between the two. It's more about how do you create win-win scenarios such that your customer wins, but you win along with them. And that's the only way you can be successful as a company, because at the end of the day, it's a lot harder to acquire new customers than to keep the existing ones happy.
Oh, of course.
So
by some people say an order of magnitude in terms of cost. Let me ask you this. The title Chief Customer Officer is not common.
it isn't.
There's chief this, chief that, but I mean, even CMO is not all that old of a title. It's 10, 20 years ago maybe we started seeing that. But Chief Customer Officer, that's the new one. And then of course you have Chief Culture Officer. I think that was changed to People and Culture Officer, right, with
Yes.
Alicia. What does a typical day of a Chief Customer Officer look like?
Okay, before I answer that question, I want to comment on the Chief Customer Officer. Yes, it is not a role that has been in existence for a long time, and it is now becoming extremely popular in SaaS technology companies, primarily because of what you said earlier, right? Which is, how do I bring that voice of customer into the boardroom? And that's the reason why a lot of companies are adopting it. That's one reason. The other reason is to bring in the unification of everything in the post-sale world for companies.
Is that really kind of your focus, is post-sale?
Post-sale, exactly. And typical day of a Chief Customer Officer, I have to switch gears from professional services to education to success to support. Each requires a very different mindset and very different thinking. If it is support, it's very reactive. I'm dealing with an escalation of a customer, somebody is upset, so I have to switch my mode to how do I react to this, how do I make best out of the situation. If it is customer success, I have to switch to strategy in terms of, okay, what does long-term look like for a customer that we are partnering with right now? Let's not worry about this quarter or the next. Let's look at what's the long-term value that we can bring to MasterControl and we can bring for them.
For that customer, the portfolio of that customer's next 10 years.
Absolutely. Okay. And then when I move to services, I'm thinking about how do I keep my people a lot more efficient? How do I make sure that they are on projects all the time and they're billing customers, because services needs to sell as well.
So this post-sale services, that's part of your
Absolutely.
portfolio, okay.
Correct.
Do you see a time, Kiran, when perhaps part of your responsibilities will extend to pre-sales
Very
down the road?
Yeah, so it's not down the road, it's actually a collaborative effort, right? So I cannot create an amazing, delightful customer experience for our customers without really touching the pre-sales piece, because you can't really delight them after the contract is signed if they've had a miserable experience during that contract process, right? So you want to almost start at the beginning. And I'm partnering with our CRO, our Chief Revenue Officer, Dave, in order to ensure that he and I are in lockstep in terms of what is that level of experience that we need to create for them, such that it stays consistent right from prospect stage to the point where they're getting ready to sign a contract, and then they sign the contract, and then Dave hands them over to me, and then I take it over, and then I run with it to the different phases. All of that needs to be different milestones, different steps in that journey, and it shouldn't look like disjointed events for that customer. It needs to look at one seamless, I know I'm going from point A to Z, and I know what happens at each step of the way.
You said something that would confuse a lot of executives. You said we live in a world where a great product or a great service is no longer enough.
True statement.
Explain what that means.
What it means is that product, as we look at it, we have competition all over the place, right? There are disruptors that are constantly going to come into the market. Everybody builds software, and it can do the exact same thing. At the end of the day, how do you differentiate yourselves? There is a big portion of, yes, I can differentiate with my product, but on top of it, if you do not add the aspect of, this is my unique recipe that nobody else has, then it doesn't create brand loyalty. It might create customers, it might bring in new logos, but the sustenance, keeping those customers anchored to your brand and making sure that they're not leaving you, that's the part where selling a great product or a service is not going to be enough. Because if you don't create that hook or that anchor, they can walk away after 4 years if they find another product that is exactly similar to yours, but is selling for a lot less.
Do you think that philosophy is different with a highly commoditized product versus a highly customized product?
It depends. It depends. If it's a highly commoditized product, then in that case, you absolutely need to worry about how am I going to now differentiate myself. There's a lot more stress on it. But if it is very niche, very unique, then probably your product could stand on its own legs at that point. So the level of effort that you have to put on customer experience would differ from one to the other.
You said something else, and I think it was part of your discussion with Emmanuel this morning, that we're helping our customers become digital out of necessity. And I think in there it was an implication of FDA requirements, the modern business reporting requirements, and so on. But a new dimension is emerging that is how to use digital to bring back and enhance the human experience. And that was quite remarkable to me. I think I sat up a little straight in my chair when I heard that, because everyone, I think what I was hearing, at least at first blush, was you tend to have this, we're going digital. So we're, by definition, losing the human touch.
Yeah.
You're flipping that concept
Yes.
180 degrees.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. We are all humans and we thrive on connections. And whether we know it or not, when you connect with another human, it just naturally makes you feel good when you have a positive conversation. COVID was a year when all of us went remote. We didn't get an opportunity to talk to each other. when we came back out of that, it explained to me the value of having human connections. It became all the more important. And here's the deal. When you go digital, and people do think digital means it's cold, insensitive, outreach, and nobody cares about it, right? But if you do not instill that human touch, which is so important, you cannot really create customers for life. You cannot create connections for life. And for me, human first is a philosophy, and I use that in everything. I talk to my teams about it everywhere I've been in my career. So human first is so important. You don't just talk to your employee like an employee. You understand them as a human being because they are their whole selves. And when I look at a customer, they are not, it's my 1200th customer or my 1500th customer. They are a human at the other side. And when you make that connection with that human, that relationship becomes a lot more powerful. And I've had customers in my past life where they moved from one company to the other, yet still.
Because of the people.
Because of the people.
Yeah.
Matters.
Kiran Dhanuka, Chief Customer Officer, MasterControl. Thank you.